Tom, Bill C-21 being reviewed to ensure it doesn't affect hunting rifles, shotguns. That's according... Look, we have that clip. Might as well go ahead and play it, Brian.
Sure.
So Justin Trudeau talking about this again today, because I guess in the wake of the Carey Price situation and, of course, the fact that it's the Polytechnique anniversary today, this is going to come up. Here's what he said.
We are not going after the rifles and shotguns used by hunters and others in a law-abiding way, but we are going against those guns that are designed to kill the largest number of people in the smallest amount of time. Those guns have no place in our communities.
Okay, so that's pretty much the same message, I guess, Tom. Anything changed here?
Well, he's backing away ever so slightly because a lot of people were starting to pick up on the fact that heading into today's commemoration of that horrible tragedy of 33 years ago when, 14 women were killed because they were women. And that's the only thing that should be on our minds. It just went into a spiral that wound up involving a hockey player and the government and 400 pages of amendment. I mean, the Bloc Québécois, by the way, has supported Bill C-21 every step of the way. And Blanchette just held a press conference a little while ago. It was worth seeing because he held up a binder with the amendments in it, and it was several inches thick. There's 400 pages of amendments that they came up with. And so how are you supposed to be an honest, hardworking MP, do your job, and actually go through something like that? So the legwork, the grunt work of preparing this thing was not done in advance. What a surprise. It's not the first time we've seen the federal government just falling down when it comes to basic management and competence. So they showed up with this thing in the middle of the process. After they've already been through one reading, they're back in committee. And I think that that's what Trudeau's trying to do now. He's trying to back away ever so slightly because he was playing with fire as he was trying to push back and use it as a wedge against, the Conservatives. Now they're starting to realize that across the country in a lot of ridings, including a lot of Liberal ridings, people are saying, hold on, this doesn't make any sense. What you're telling us is one thing, but what's actually in here is another. You better start over again. And I honestly think, Aaron and Natasha, that that's Trudeau's only option at this point, simply starting over again, because this thing has turned into a real mess for him. The document that's on the table now is a dog's breakfast. There's not a judge in the country that will be able to apply that thing. And I remind people who are following this that a judge will strike down any possibility of a conviction if he finds that the statute is void for vagueness. And that's where we're heading right now. It's incomprehensible what they're trying to do.
Well, speaking of things being a mess, I feel like that's what's happened with this Carey Price situation. So he, of course, puts the post saying he's not a criminal for being a gun owner and a hunter. The Canadians issue an apology, say he wasn't aware. Then he issues another statement via Twitter saying, no, I was aware, and kind of apologizes. The only good thing, in my opinion, that has come of this is that it's got people talking more about the Polytechnique anniversary. But what's your take on this, Tom?
I'm so upset that Carey Price has made himself the subject of conversation in all of this. He did it intentionally. He posted that picture of himself with that high-sounding phrase. Then people started pointing out, oh, by the way, your gun, it's not even captured by this legislation. And what indeed are you talking about? And aren't you aware that this is the commemoration of that horrible murder of 14 women? And so today, I agree with you, more or less of an apology. He's trying to back away from it. But one of the two is not telling the truth. I mean, either the Montreal Canadiens Hockey Club wasn't telling the truth when they said that Carey Price didn't know about the Polytechnique massacre, which is pretty hard to believe, but that's what they were telling us yesterday. And what were they basing themselves on when they were saying that? And now, of course, as you just correctly said, Price is saying, no, I knew about it. But I don't think that helps his case.
No.
Because if he knew about it and he still posted that picture of himself standing in a field in camouflage gear saying, that he supports this group, that group that he's talking about, that firearms group, was having a contest using poly, as in Polytechnique, as the hashtag to give away some hunting gear. So this is not something that, anybody who had thought about this for a nanosecond wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole, but he decided that, it was going to be his 15 minutes of fame.
All right. I wonder, I said when we talked about this earlier today, Natasha, I wonder if this story is done. And I guess the answer is no, it's not.
I don't think it's done.
Right?
And like I said, I think I don't like that we're talking about Carey Price when we should be commemorating those 14 lost lives.
those lights are going to be going on the mountain anytime now.
Right
Although
now.
I'm not sure how much we're going to see with the lousy weather and the low ceiling. But that's the important thing today, is to remember that violence against women is still a real problem in our society. Use this as a day to reflect on that and make sure that we tell ourselves, we'll all act to never allow anything like that ever to happen again.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about COP15. It is underway. Prime Minister Trudeau there today, along with a whole bunch of protesters. And Natasha kept asking, how did they get in? How did they get in? This was inside during a presser, Tom.
Yeah, I've been to one of these things. To several of the COPs under the Kyoto Protocol, but most importantly, one having to do with environment when we were in Mexico, and it was under the North American Free Trade Agreement. And what essentially happens is everybody's sort of in on the fact that this group is going to hold a little protest and be ushered out, and it doesn't get beyond that. So I suspect that, to use a good Québécois expression, arrangé avec le gars des vues. I don't think that there was a huge surprise, otherwise they wouldn't have been in the hall. And I think that very few of them were actually Canadian. They were probably Indigenous people from other countries affected by issues involving biodiversity. Their voices absolutely have to be heard. They had a right to be in there, but they decided to stand up right in the middle of Trudeau's speech. And he did seem to be taken aback a little bit. It interrupted his speech, and it did seem to catch him a little bit off guard. If he was aware of it, he's a very good actor.
Yeah, he just stood there smiling,
he
kind of
is
waiting
a very
for
good actor, Tom. We already know that. So
that's true.
I was just going to mention, as we're watching a live feed from there right now, François Legault and a bunch of people with him were actually wearing masks. So I find that interesting that they're being proactive and masking up.
The mayor of Montreal, all of François Legault, everybody from the Quebec side has been wearing masks until it was their turn to get to the stand. And it's a way of showing that if you're in a hall with thousands of people packed like sardines, it's still a really good idea to wear a mask, and I'm with them.
Okay.
Me too.
Nice. All right. Last thing I want to get to before we get out of here. What happened today in Quebec City? So Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, did he win? Did he lose? What's going to happen next here?
Well, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon won, especially his arm wrestle with the other separatist party, the Québec Solidaire. So that is good news for him, because he gets to puff out his chest a little bit and say, "You see, I'm the real colonialism fighter. Come with me." And at the same time, there's always a chance that somebody's going to try to get heroic about this and stall it. But I think that the way it's heading now, it's going to be unanimous consent, because it's not eliminating any possibility of swearing an oath to the king or the queen eventually, but it's a way of saying you have the option. And I think it's a smart way of doing it. They're putting the Constitution in there, which is, of course, encompasses the monarchy, because the monarchy is part of our Constitution. So I think it works pretty well. It's something you and I have talked about in the past, actually. And I always thought that it was the easiest way to square that circle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just wondering now, so when they resume, it's still going to take a couple of days for this thing to play out, is it not?
Yeah, for sure. They call it adopting it 1, 2, 3, but it'll go on over a couple of days. There'll be some discussion in committee, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But anybody tries to belabor the point, they're going to wear it. Like you can see, there might be one or two people in the Liberal Party saying, "Oh, well, we should push this a little bit." And the answer, if Mark Tomkay has a half a brain in his head, he's going to say, "We're not going to stall this thing for 1 second, otherwise we'll wear it later on."
So we actually have that clip. I don't think we have time to play it here, but I did want to ask that. I have this kind of nagging suspicion in the back of my mind that it'll finally get approved on Friday, just enough time to recess and not come back for another month.
7 weeks, right? That's outrageous.
That'd be a nice trick.
How is that possible?
They've been working hard. They've worked for 7 days since last June.
Oh,
Come on,
God.
don't be so harsh.
Wow.
This
isn't normal, though, is it, Tom? No.
It's an election year. We got to give them a break. They come back for a short while. Same thing. When Trudeau won in 2015, it was at the end of the fall. Came back for a very short session, tried to pass a few things, and then you come back for the real session in the spring.
Yeah.
But is that big a break in the holidays normal as well? Could they take? Okay, all right.
And by the way, in Quebec City, to be very objective about this, they actually work harder than they do in Ottawa, and the riding work is actually a real slog. The riding work when you're working in the provincial government.
I bet it is.
One day. Tom Mulcair back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at about 7:40 a.m. Thank you, Tom.